here I am back again for this evening, Tuesday the 6th of May. So I thought we'd have a look at this, the unstoppable rise. Reform wins 10 councils, 670 council seats and 2 mayoralties. Well, that's good, isn't it? And here we have Julia Hartley Brewery and Darren Grimes. I really like Darren Grimes. Let's jump in. I'll just check that you're... Have we got volume, Gert? Yeah, that usually helps if we've got what's called volume. There we go. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? So let's jump in.
I'm actually quite sort of, reserved when it comes to viewing these things as a slam dunk. I never ever operate like that. But what I would say, though, is that all of the pollsters and the pundits, they had us on, 300 seats. Certainly 500 would be looking immediately very positive. But to get 677...
I think on reflection that the Reform gain 670 council seats. I mean, where would you take your vote at the moment with the Conservatives and Labour? It's a protest vote, isn't it? And if you hear the rhetoric coming out of FARAGE, it doesn't bode well for the future. I don't think it would translate over into a general election, because we've all got to remember that he wants to start dismantling the National Health Service and bringing in something reminiscent of the American way of doing health services. So, and that wouldn't help at all anybody. What really needs to happen is the diversity equity people need to get out. They need to downscale the management, because they've usually, most hospitals got more non-medical staff, in other words, office people, and that needs to stop. If that actually did happen, then the National Health Service would thrive, because you could afford to, it's a health service, isn't it? Employ more nurses and doctors. Usually you see that the vacancies within the health service aren't really necessarily for medical staff. That's all I'm saying. So that's a problem. And also the whole immigration thing he's backtracked on. So many other things as well. He's just... I still think he's a protest vote. And I think if it was a national election, he wouldn't get as... I don't think he... I think the talking heads are saying he will in 29. The next election, he'll be the next Prime Minister. And I think that's where they're heading for, or hoping to head for. But we're going to have to wait and see on that one, because it's a very, very long time for the uninitiated public to get used to Nigel Farage. And I'm sure by 2029, most people have a different opinion. That's what I think, and I'm entitled to think that. There you go.
He predicted that. Nobody saw that coming. And I think actually, Julia, it goes to the very heart of all the issues that you've just been mentioning there. I mean, you touched on the fact that net zero isn't really a local election issue. Well, hang on. I have to tell you, Julia, the spending, for example, take potholes as one example. The spending on electric JCBs to fill these potholes is huge, right? And that's because of a net zero commitment. So it really does impact the pound and pence spent at a local level as well as an...
It also comes down to the fact that they're privatised out now, whereas before you had the highways department, didn't you, that handled all things to do with roads and highways, really. And nowadays it's privatised out to, smaller outfits that tender their contracts to fill potholes. And we can all see across the country that doesn't really work. From what I've gathered, they usually have one firm that digs a hole, then another firm will come up and do the repair of the hole, and another one will be in charge of the signage and this, that and the other, and painting the roads again. It's just, give it back to the Highways Agency and let them deal with it. That is my opinion.
Very good point.
Well, sorry.
And actually, when people talk about these estimates of the cost of net zero to people, it's an extra £200 on your electricity, your energy bill. But actually, no, it's not. It's all those costs that all the businesses have and all those commitments, not just the net zero officers, but every single commitment on those issues. And all of that ends up being paid for either by the taxpayer or us as consumers. So it all feeds back to us in the end.
Yeah.
Absolutely right,
Yeah, it is, they're very good at spending other people's money, the immortal words of the late Mrs. Thatcher, who I absolutely couldn't stand at the time. And redeeming features, I'm not sure. But there you go. So anyway, we're here now, and we've got Starmer.
And the other issues, you know, the visa crackdowns and all these other things, well, for local government, that's been having a real impact, actually, on the allocation of houses and resources. Because don't forget that as soon as you accept one of these, when one is forced upon you, that is, that actually you've got to pay for everything from translation costs to the education of the children. So this
is actually having quite a big impact on children's services and issues around children's services, because of the money, the sheer amount, it's billions of pounds every year that is spent on people being employed to translate for people that can't speak English as their first language. That trickles down to the fact that children's services are really, really stretched. Services for the elderly. Also, we all know about the assault on disabled people. I've been here before. It's 0.1% fraud happening within disability benefits, and if you translate that or go and have a look at, say, white collar crime, which is always traditionally, it's harder to prosecute, but it's always greater than everyday crime, if you get me. And and also when you think of MPs' expenses, that tends to be a larger percentage of people erroneously claiming stuff, which again is paid for by the taxpayer, but they take it out on the elderly, the disabled and children, and give it to everybody else. We're going to hear something about Rwanda in a minute. I can just feel it. I can feel it.
To the taxpayer is always massive. Local elections really do matter, and I think people really understood that in this election.
Well, let's talk about some of those key issues that where reform has been doing well. I'll start with the immigration issue. There are two separate ones. One is the illegal migrants coming across the channel, and we had these interviews over the weekend with senior figures in reform, basically saying, look, you know, we're basically going to play the game that the Republicans have played in America, which is like, you know, we're going to ship out, you know, the Democrats basically saying, oh, we're in favour of all these migrants coming over from Mexico. Well, okay, you can have them then. Send them to Martha's Vineyard and the playgrounds of the lefty rich.
That's a different issue then, isn't it, though, Julia? That's completely different. They're NIMBYs then, aren't they? Not in my backyard. So, yeah, it's full of hooey. And I think at the moment, if you look at the amount of immigration that has happened, say, within the last 5 years even, you will find that men in Britain, I believe, are outnumbered. They outnumber women. That's what I think. Because you can't introduce a top-heavy amount of... I mean, it's knocking a million extra people that live in Britain. We're an island, you know? And, so there's that to it. And that's obviously going to, at some point... contract and cause all sorts of social problems. That's not to say that it's not already caused historically a lot of social problems. So it's a clash of cultures and everything, isn't it, really? There you go. I could say a lot more, but I get into trouble on YouTube. I'm thinking about opening a Substack where I can speak more openly and say exactly what I think and feel.
Don't like it. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? Actually, a lot of these people are shipped into places where, you know, the Labour great and good and the Lib Dem great and good don't actually live. So what is the policy there in terms of the illegal migrants, the boat migrants?
So certainly HMOs are a problem in our neck of the woods.
This is houses a lot multiple occupancy.
Exactly, so,
immigration is always going to be the hot potato, isn't it? It doesn't matter what government is going to... Unless you get a government that says, look... And I think it's Rupert Lowe that's saying it. And it's Rupert Lowe that's advocating for the inquiry into the GLOOMING gangs, as I like to call them, for the algorithms. So up against FARAGE, that's totally against it. I'd like to know more of his policies to do with women and children, and that is a thing, especially if considering, as I've just said, moving forward, we're going to be outnumbered in our own country, us women. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we've got Mess Phillips, she's in charge of women and safeguarding at the moment, and I think possibly the less said about her, the better.
hostels, effectively.
Yeah, and the creation of them. So, for example, I can think of a former bank that has been transformed into, Housing 7 Men, for example, where actually if you are, imagine you, Julia, in a working class area of County Durham, and you suddenly find out that next door to you and your daughter is a family, is a set of 7
Well, yeah,
nature.
I mean, yes, we've all seen that. I mean, I've seen it. I live remotely, and we've got one of those hotels that's said, I'm not allowed to say, to get me one of them. No one asked. We didn't know. Happened overnight. Anyway, we're all far too polite to mention it. But, yeah, there is that. And I've also seen the sheer irony. I don't know whether it would be worth actually doing a video about it or doing some sort of satirical look at it. Because I have in real time seen our ethnic newcomers, our brethren, in lovely seafront hotels, and to get to the seafront hotel to walk in the door, and they all seem to get push bikes to ride. Because, I mean, Perisher thought we don't, because they've got here on the boat, obviously their legs are a bit, do you get me? So they don't like to walk around town, they all have push bikes. Very reminiscent of Holland, actually. You always know when it's a migrant hotel because there's loads and loads of push bikes, mainly left hither and thither around the place, so you have to be careful you don't trip over them when you pass by. But conversely, I've actually in real time had to pass homeless people sat in doorways to pass the hotel that's full of our newcomers. So there's that. Shall I just say that for what it's worth? Maybe I shouldn't say it. Okay, I won't say it.
Men moving in next door. I'm not sure you'd be best pleased about it, but for saying that for such a long time, you've been smeared as being racist, bigoted, xenophobic, whatever else, and now Labour expect us to say, oh, well, they understand it now, they get it, they're going to stop handing out these visas like confetti.
And it's weird because this is another thing, every time people, because these people, they're not bright. They're not what one might call educated in the true sense. Or it might just be me because I'm old and I sort of lived in post-war Britain. Yeah, I grew up in post-war Britain. So some of the people nowadays that are in positions of power, whether it's professional classes, political or media classes, they do that dog whistle which we discussed yesterday. And anybody that says something they don't like, they always say, oh, you're far right, you're far right. And we know who they're alluding to, don't we, darling? We know exactly who they're alluding to, that horrible little German character in, Europe in the 30s, 40s. And actually he was a socialist, so I don't know where that leaves everyone. And I have had people say to me, oh, you mustn't be mad if you think that. No, I wish I was mad. But it's literally on the tin. It was the National German Socialist Workers' Party. It was in the description. It literally was. So when people do say to you, you're far right, you automatically know they're blithering, uneducated idiots, and just don't worry about it. It's not their fault.
To those from countries who don't share our culture, our values and our views. But I'm not convinced, actually, that the Labour government won't continue to use its statutory powers to actually force us to take in these people. So what we will do is use every single instrument in our power to delay, obfuscate, to actually go around saying...
I mean, yeah, I know, Darren, I understand exactly what you're saying, Darren, but I remember also that the Sunak government and the Johnson government gave huge, and we're talking billions, like £30 billion, I think at least twice occasions that I picked up on it in the news. So if I've picked up on it twice, it's probably happened a lot more than that. That we paid to the French to stop the boats coming. So obviously that problem doesn't exist now. Or if it does, maybe we should have a refund. Because if you pay somebody for a service and they don't give you that service, maybe you should take the French to court. I mean, maybe you should go to the European Court of Human Rights. Something like that. I mean, that wouldn't wash either, would it? That would definitely not fly. Anyway, do a couple more minutes.
No to doing this. And you know what? If the party was to bus people down to number 10 Downing Street, I'd personally cheer them on and wave them off.
So be it. And that's the reality. I've always said if we had the channel migrants, these undocumented men are fighting
I've just noticed that. Did he win his council? So he's a Reform UK councillor. Oh, well done, Darren. Well done. I've watched him grow up on here, I've been following him for a few years. Not in real life, honestly, that would be weird. But yeah, on here, and he's a nice little lad. I like him. He speaks a lot of sense. But obviously, you can't help, FARAGE business. Best not talk about that because he is very popular at the moment. God knows why. But some of his followers are completely, if they reflect him and he reflects them, God help us women in this country. God help us. I'm going to have to go to church and light a load more bleeding candles tomorrow. So if you hear a church has gone up, it would be Gert with her candles. So anyway, I've had enough, you've had enough. Let's tap out and say goodbye to everybody. Love you all wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye now.